Welcome to the Deep Dive. A special welcome if you're one of our C9 followers or perhaps an Australian business owner or C-level executive joining us. Today, we're really zeroing in on something critical. It's this issue that's, well, quietly eating away at profits across Australian businesses, vendor lock-in.
Yeah, it's a real strategic trap, isn't it? You think you're getting flexibility with the cloud, but then suddenly you find you're sort of digitally handcuffed. And look, we're not just talking about technical debt here. This is about, potentially huge financial liabilities down the track.
Exactly. And just to, I guess, really highlight how serious this is, let's kick off with a specific case. Pretty stark example, actually. We looked at this Melbourne-based manufacturing company. After only 3 years with one vendor, their whole operation was basically welded to that platform.
Right. And when they needed to expand, maybe bring in some better AI capabilities, they thought, okay, let's see what migrating involves. So they asked for a quote.
And the quote they got back.
Yeah. It was $2.4 million
Huh.
and an 18-month timeline just to leave.
Just to leave.
Yeah.
Not for a new system, but essentially exit fee.
That's it. It just shows how fast you lose your bargaining power once a vendor knows you're stuck.
So our mission today is pretty clear. We want to cut through that complexity, really define those hidden costs that creep up on you, and crucially, lay out the strategic alternatives, things like hybrid and multi-cloud database approaches that are actually working for businesses right now, looking ahead to 2026. Let's unpack it.
Okay, so when we say vendor lock-in, you've got to understand, it's not just some IT department headache. It's fundamentally a financial liability on your books. The moment your data can't move easily, you've sort of lost control over your future tech spending.
And the data really backs this up, doesn't it? Especially when it comes to contract renewals. That price escalation seems almost inevitable. What sort of jumps are companies actually seeing once the vendor knows they've got them?
Yeah, it's pretty consistent. We're seeing vendors use that leverage to push renewal prices up by, say, 15 to 30% per year.
15 to 30%
Yeah.
annually.
Annually.
Wow.
And that's often unbudgeted, right? So it hits the bottom line hard and it compounds year after year.
That's painful enough.
Yeah.
But the sources we reviewed also talk about something called feature hostages. That sounds, well, pretty manipulative.
It really is. Imagine you need a fairly basic new function, maybe better security logging or a specific integration tool, something essential. But the only way the vendor lets you access it is by upgrading to their super expensive premium tier.
So they control your ability to innovate, basically, by locking necessary features behind a paywall.
Exactly. They dictate your roadmap based on their pricing structure, not your business needs.
Now, for businesses that went all in on public cloud databases, there's often another nasty surprise waiting, isn't there? That cloud bill shock. And I think this is where the Australian experience can be particularly rough.
Absolutely. The reports are showing Australian companies getting hit with unexpected annual cost increases on their cloud bills of anywhere between, say, 23 and 40%.
23 to 40%.
Yeah. And this is probably a good moment to quickly clarify some of that jargon, especially for the execs listening.
Good point. We keep hearing about egress fees. Just to be clear, egress fees. That's basically the vendor charging you money just to take your own data out of their system, right?
That's precisely it. A penalty for moving your data. It might be moving it out entirely, or sometimes even just moving it between different regions they operate.
Feels like the opposite of a partnership.
It does, and often it's coupled with other things, like hidden API call charges or data transfer fees buried deep in the contract's fine print. And these issues, they tend to hit harder here in Australia.
Okay, why is that? Why are local businesses potentially more exposed to these sorts of penalties?
Well, there are two main reasons, really. First, data sovereignty. We have specific Australian regulations about where certain data needs to reside. If you're locked into a single global vendor, their infrastructure options might not actually meet those local compliance needs easily, limiting your choices.
Right, so fewer compliant options means less leverage.
Exactly. And second, there's often a kind of geographic premium. Global vendors sometimes charge higher rates in the Asia-Pacific region. Plus, you might get slower support because of time zones. All this just reduces the competitive pressure that might otherwise help you negotiate better terms.
Okay, so the trap's clear, the costs are real and documented. Yet so many businesses seem stuck, paralyzed almost, delaying what feels inevitable. Let's shift gears now and tackle some of the myths, the dangerous thinking that keeps companies locked in, starting with that classic excuse, migration is just too expensive right now.
Ah, yes, the kick the can down the road approach. It feels safer, maybe, to wait for next year's budget, but here's the brutal truth. Every single month you wait, That migration actually gets 3 to 5% more expensive.
3 to 5% more expensive each month?
Well, your data keeps growing, doesn't it? Systems become more interconnected, more dependent on the vendor's specific tools. The vendor's grip just gets tighter. So the cost of doing nothing, that inertia, it's actually escalating faster than the cost of a planned strategic move. The best time to move was probably yesterday. The second best time, it's today.
That inertia, or sometimes it's misplaced confidence, right?
Yeah.
Which leads us straight to the second big myth. Oh, our internal team can handle multi-cloud.
Mm.
It sounds appealing, being independent. But what's the real risk if you try to DIY a hybrid or multi-cloud strategy without the right expertise?
The risk is actually huge. Proper multi-cloud architecture. It's not just about splitting workloads across different clouds. It's really complex. It needs deep, specialized skills in security across platforms, in complex integration engineering, and keeping everything synchronized. Most internal IT teams, honestly, just don't have that specific skill set readily available.
So what happens? They try anyway.
They often do. And what we see is that these half-baked DIY multi-cloud setups frequently end up costing more than staying with the single vendor. You get massive management overhead trying to juggle everything, and worse, you often create serious security holes because the different systems weren't designed properly to talk to each other securely.
That lack of genuine architectural know-how, it seems like it opens the door to another major danger the reports are flagging for, well, right now and into 2026. This whole trend of using AI tools, generative AI, to build critical business systems.
Ah, yes. The AI cowboy problem, as some are calling it.
The AI cowboy, I like that. It paints a picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Fast code, maybe it looks good initially, but leads to massive problems later.
Yeah.
Can you break down why that promise, getting database work done for maybe $50 or $80 an hour using AI tools is actually so incredibly risky for core business functions?
The appeal is definitely strong. Low hourly rates, promises of incredible speed because the AI is generating chunks of database code. But this approach, this sort of vibes coding, where you rely on the tool without deep architectural understanding, it plants time bombs in your system, and they tend to go off maybe 6 months, a year down the line.
What's the first big explosion when that AI cowboy, the cheap freelancer or budget builder, inevitably moves on?
It's zero knowledge transfer. The code the AI generates often uses weird patterns or relies on complex libraries and dependencies that aren't documented anywhere. So when the person who prompted the AI leaves, your own team or even another consultant looks at it and it's basically incomprehensible. It's impossible to maintain or update safely.
And the security implications must be terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. Think about how these AI tools work. They learn from massive amounts of public code, like from GitHub repositories. If those public code bases contain known security flaws or outdated, vulnerable patterns, which many do, the AI can replicate those flaws directly into your critical database infrastructure without anyone noticing, until it's too late.
So it bypasses proper human review and security protocols.
Exactly. Database architecture needs rigorous, expert human design and review. It needs security baked in from the start, not just hoping the AI gets it right.
We saw a really sobering example of this, didn't we? An Australian retail company that went down this path.
Yeah, it was a classic case. They initially saved about $40,000 on the upfront cost of a key database integration by using an AI app builder. Seemed like a win,
Good.
but about 18 months later, the whole thing started failing under real-world load. It was fragile, impossible to debug properly. In the end, they had to spend $340,000 ripping it out, fixing the mess, and rebuilding the entire system correctly with proper architectural oversight.
Wow, $340,000 to fix a $40,000 saving. That's, what, an 850% penalty?
Roughly, yeah. The lesson is crystal clear. Core database systems demand thoughtful design for long-term maintainability, security, and scalability. You can't just vibe code your way through it.
Okay, so we've laid out the trap, we've shot down the myths, highlighted the new dangers like the AI cowboys. Now for the constructive part. What actually is the proven, structured way out of vendor lock-in? Let's talk about the strategic solution that three-phase approach successful Australian companies are using.
Right. The key word here is structure. This isn't guesswork. It's a methodical escape plan. And it absolutely relies on 3 core phases. Phase 1 is the strategic assessment. This is non-negotiable groundwork. You have to start here. It involves auditing every single dependency your systems have on the current vendor, clearly mapping out which data workloads are critical versus non-critical, and meticulously listing all your compliance and data sovereignty requirements before you even think about technology solutions.
So know exactly what you've got, what's important, and what the rules are before you plan the move. Makes sense. What's next? The design phase.
Exactly. Phase 2, hybrid architecture design. This is where you start building leverage back into your strategy. You deliberately design your systems to distribute workloads across different environments. That could be a mix of on-premises, maybe a private cloud, and potentially multiple public clouds where it makes sense. And the absolute crucial element here is implementing vendor-agnostic patterns and tools wherever possible.
Vendor agnostic.
Mhm.
That brings us back to something you mentioned earlier, data abstraction layers. Can you just quickly unpack what that means and why it's so key for future flexibility?
Think of it like putting a universal translator between your business applications and the actual database sitting underneath. Your applications talk to this abstraction layer in a standard way. The abstraction layer then handles the specific communication needed for whatever database you're using at the time, vendor A's, vendor B's, or even an open source one.
Ah, okay. So if you decide to switch database vendors later,
You primarily just need to reconfigure or update that abstraction layer to talk to the new database. You don't have to rewrite all your business applications from scratch. It creates genuine portability and breaks the vendor's hold.
that makes a huge difference. Okay, so you've done the assessment, designed the flexible architecture. Phase 3 is the actual move.
Phase 3, staged migration. And staged is the operative word. You don't try to boil the ocean and move everything in one terrifying big bang. You start smart. Move the less critical workloads first. Use that process to prove the new architecture works, refine your migration techniques, build team confidence, and really importantly, moving those non-critical systems first often generates early cost savings or other tangible ROI.
Right, so those early wins can actually help fund the later, more complex stages of migrating the core business systems.
Precisely. It builds momentum and makes the whole process financially sustainable.
And when companies actually follow this structured three-phase approach correctly, not cutting corners, but doing it strategically, the results, the regained control, it's pretty dramatic, isn't it?
The data shows really substantial gains. Businesses that implement a proper multi-cloud or hybrid strategy correctly typically see a 30 to 45% reduction in their relevant database and infrastructure costs over about 3 years compared to staying locked in.
30 to 45% cost reduction, that's huge.
It is. Plus, they often report deploying new features and updates around 60% faster because they're not held back by the vendor's limitations. And maybe most importantly for the long term, their negotiating leverage with those big vendors improves massively. We're talking 90% improvement reported in their ability to negotiate future pricing and terms. They're back in control.
Back in the driver's seat. Okay, this all sounds logical, structured, effective, which brings us to a really crucial question. If these steps work, why do we still hear about so many database projects, migration projects, failing?
Yeah, the uncomfortable truth.
Yeah. The data suggests most database projects actually fail before the first line of code even gets written. And it's usually because businesses skip that vital first step we talked about, the strategic assessment, or what's often called discovery.
Exactly. Too many businesses see discovery as just a costly formality, a box to tick quickly. Or worse, something they can just handle with a few internal meetings. They fail to see it for what it really is. The single most important risk mitigation strategy you can employ. It's the blueprint for the entire project.
You wouldn't build a complex building without detailed architectural blueprints, right?
You wouldn't. And you can't architect a successful, resilient, cost-effective database environment for your business without that same level of rigorous, upfront strategic mapping and planning.
So for the executives listening, what are the concrete outcomes? What does a proper, robust discovery process actually deliver that you just can't get from winging it?
It really boils down to 3 core deliverables: clarity, confidence, and control. Clarity about your true current costs, including all that hidden technical debt and vendor lock-in impact. Clarity on dependencies. Confidence that the proposed future architecture genuinely meets your business needs, your scaling plans, and all those critical compliance and sovereignty rules. And finally, control. Control through having documented, viable alternatives considered, and clear risk mitigation strategies planned out before you commit millions to the build.
And when you look at it financially, the argument for investing in proper discovery becomes, well, almost a no-brainer.
It really is the ultimate insurance policy against catastrophic failure. The numbers are stark. A proper discovery engagement might cost somewhere between, say, $15,000 and $35,000, depending on the complexity of the business and systems involved.
Okay.
But the cost of skipping it, that's where you see the failures. We're talking project blowouts costing $250,000, $500,000, sometimes $2 million or even more, in rework, abandoned projects, and lost business opportunities.
Compared to that potential downside, the upfront investment in discovery looks tiny.
It is. It genuinely represents the highest ROI investment you can possibly make across your entire technology lifecycle. It prevents those massive failures.
Now, another critical factor for success, especially when working with an external partner like C9 on this, is ensuring genuine knowledge transfer, right?
Yeah.
You can't afford to just swap one form of lock-in for another.
Absolutely fundamental. You need a partner who is committed to making you self-sufficient in the long run. That means providing thorough documentation for everything they build. It means training your internal IT team on the new architecture and how to manage it. Any partner worth their salt rejects knowledge hoarding. They know that confident, capable clients become reference clients.
That makes sense. And bringing it back to the finances, that staged migration approach you outlined earlier, that's key to making this achievable.
Yes, finding that initial win is crucial. If stage one of the migration, maybe moving those non-critical workloads, achieves even a 15 to 20% cost reduction relatively quickly,
Then those savings can directly fund the more complex, more expensive Stage 2 migration.
exactly, it flips the funding model. Instead of needing a massive upfront capital investment for the whole project, the migration process itself starts generating the savings to pay for the subsequent stages. It becomes self-funding in a way.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the key takeaway for the Australian executives, the C-level leaders listening to us today?
I think the final thought, maybe a bit provocative, is this. Look, the question isn't if you'll eventually have to deal with your vendor lock-in situation, because you almost certainly will. The real question is when and how. Will you tackle it strategically now while you still have some negotiating power and control over the timing and process? Or will you wait until you're forced to act desperately later when the vendor holds all the cards, the costs are astronomical, and you have basically no leverage left?
A powerful question to consider. Don't let vendor lock-in drain your resources and stifle innovation until it becomes an emergency. Take proactive steps today. We strongly encourage you to book a consultation to discuss your specific database architecture, identify your lock-in risks, and explore strategic alternatives.
This deep dive has been brought to you by C9. We're Australia's leading custom software, apps, integration, and database developer company.
You can find much more information on strategic database architecture, risk assessment, and how to start that crucial discovery process on our website. That's www.c9.com.au.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this important discussion.
Yes, thank you for tuning in. Please do click that follow button on your podcast app so you don't miss future deep dives. And if you found this valuable, please share it with others in your network who could benefit from understanding these risks and solutions. We'll catch you next time.